You might be here with Peppa Pig, but maybe not with some of the mysteries that are still unsolved in this kid's show. Here are a few of the most popular ones. Mr. Volf is one of the most suspicious characters in Peppa Pig. We know that all the animals in this series, despite their nature, live in harmony, but Mr. Volf might be an exception. Throughout the show, we've seen Mr. Volf reveal his true colors on several occasions, like in one episode where Daddy Pig and Mr. Volf decide to go on a picnic. But first, they have to cross a river on a boat. As they're traveling, Mr. Volf keeps mentioning how hungry he is and looks at Daddy Pig in a pretty odd way. It seems like he's more interested in Daddy Pig than in the food in the picnic basket. In another episode, Daddy Pig builds a house for the Volf family, and when Mr. Volf comes to check it out, he makes a joke about the materials used to build it. If you didn't know, the joke is a reference to the story of the three little pigs. Looking at all these details, one might think that Mr. Volf is actually a predator. However, we can't say that for sure. On the other hand, Pepper is 4 years old and George is 18 months. They're both in the same class at school with all of Peppa and George's friends and have the same teacher, Madame Gazelle, and the same lessons. But the question here is, how is George in school at just 18 months? So, Peppa probably would have been in school when she was 18 months old too. If that were the case, she would have been learning the same stuff George is learning now. But Peppa is actually learning the same things as George now, which is super confusing. Does this mean Peppa is stuck repeating the same school year over and over? Or has George skipped some stages and needs to get the same lessons as the 4-year-olds? Plus, why are they even at such a young age? Some might argue it's more of a playgroup than a school, which is why all the kids are grouped together. But there are 2 points to that. First, the place is way too structured to be just a playgroup. What Peppa and George go to is definitely a school. You can tell because all the kids sit down, behave, and listen to the teacher. Plus, they're actually learning things instead of just fighting over the sandbox and peeing in the corner of the classroom. First off, they often refer to this place as a school, especially during events like the school party or the school play. So why are all these kids from different age groups in the same class? That's one of the biggest mysteries of Peppa Pig. Now, let's talk about one of the more unsettling mysteries of the show. As we know, Peppa Pig features different species of animals: pig, rabbit, bear, fox, lion, and more. But the real question is, what's going on there? They probably aren't eating meat, because if Mr. Fox and Mr. Volf were eating meat, it would throw off the whole ecosystem of the show, and these animals couldn't live together in harmony. However, we can't completely deny that these animals don't eat meat. In the fire truck episode, we see Peppa and her soccer team gathered for a barbecue. Looking at the participants, there's a zebra, a rabbit, and a pony who are vegetarians. But besides them, there's also Mr. Bull. Mr. Pig represents the 2 most common types of meat at barbecues worldwide: beef and pork. So, what kind of barbecue can a group of animals like this throw together? Also, it's no secret that Madame Gazelle is a vampire, even though the creators of Peppa Pig have never said it outright. It's believed she's hundreds of years old, which brings up more questions about her, like what her real name is, since Madame isn't a name and Gazelle is just her species. The mystery is that Madame Gazelle used to be in a band with her sisters. They called her Gazelle Rocker in an episode where the kids were drawing their families. We found out that her sisters are named Greta and Gretel, but we still don't know Madame Gazelle's real name. In a farewell party episode, one of her sisters calls her 12, which are the initials of her name Gigi. The second G is for Gazelle, but what about the first one? Since her sisters' names also start with a G, Greta and Gretel, maybe that's Madame Gazelle's name too, also starts with a G, but what could its past be? It's still a mystery. Throughout the show, there have been mentions of wild animals, and one thing is always consistent: they always seem to be scared of them. In some episodes, like Wendy Volf's birthday, the kids freak out at the thought of a wild animal, only to find out later it was just Wendy's grandma. And in the episode, with Pedro the cowboy, the kids get scared again thinking there's a wild animal, only to discover a little. Even though Pedro jokes that it was an eagle, it's not surprising since birds seem like just regular animals in the Peppa Pig universe. Plus, in the episode where all the kids go to the zoo, Madame Gazelle's reaction to Mr. Lion and Mrs. Crocodile shows that lions and crocodiles are wild animals, but clearly they're not here. This is where the theoretical part comes in, and to be honest, it's more of a guess than a theory. Really, there's a lot of evidence to come up with a solid theory, but it's enough to assume that in Peppa Pig's universe, there are two types of animals, wild ones and civilized ones. It's possible they diverged at some point, with one group sticking to being just animals while the other evolved and developed a civilization. But what's really mysterious is that even if they live together peacefully, what do they eat, meat or veggies? This is definitely one of the biggest mysteries in Peppa Pig. We also find out that there's not just one talking potato, but two. On top of that, one of them is Super Potato, and he even has superpowers. At first, everyone thought Super Potato was just Mr. Potato in a cape and red underwear, but seeing them together made us realize they're separate characters. Besides these two big veggies, in the Christmas special of Mr. Poe, we found more talking fruits and vegetables like Mrs. Carrot, Blueberry, and Sprout, all with their own lives, arms, legs, and voices. It's clear that these characters aren't meant for kids' meals, but where do these thinking vegetables come from? Some fans think they might be the result of lab experiments that brought ordinary veggies to life. Super Potato with his flying ability adds to the mystery. There are others like Mr. Beetroot out there too. If these veggies are the result of scientific experiments, who's behind it all? All these questions add another layer of mystery to the world of Peppa Pig. Talking animals, dancing vegetables, and celebrities. Peppa's world also has some humans. It's pretty clear when we see someone playing Santa Claus in Mr. Potato's show. Another episode with a regular person is when a pirate walks right past the police station and the cop wonders why pirates never come to them to get their money back. So we can conclude there are at least three groups in the world of Peppa. There are talking animals, talking veggies, and a few humans too, though you hardly see them. So where do they really live? That's definitely one of the biggest mysteries of Peppa Pig. So those were some of the mysteries of what's up with the potato fence? Why does everyone fall down when they laugh? These are just a couple of the unanswered questions about Peppa Pig. In this video, we're gonna check out some mysterious things about Peppa Pig that need answers. The first question we have is, why does everyone fall when they laugh? Just imagine if that happened in real life. We'd all be rolling on the floor. We'd have to wear knee pads and helmets. But seriously, why do they fall when they laugh? We need to know. The interesting question is whether Mrs. Gazelle is a vampire. In the episode The Pumpkin Party, it's weird that she didn't have a reflection in the mirror, and the narrator noticed that too. In the same episode, he mentioned that Susie's vampire costume reminded him of old times, which made people think Mrs. Gazelle might be a vampire. Plus, in the episode Mrs. Gazelle's House, there's an old Christmas tree next to her place, and when Mr. Bull climbed the tree to take a look if there are living beings, there are definitely bats. Miss Gazelle says her bat friends remind her of the good old days. Plus, since the Christmas tree is really big and Miss Gazelle has had it since she was little, it could last forever. These two incidents freaked people out and suggest that Peppa Pig is darker than we thought, and there's actually a story unfolding behind it. Mr. Fox is one of them. One of the sketchiest characters in Peppa Pig shows up in an episode where Grandpa Pig is taking care of his chickens. He mentions that some animals come out at night, and suddenly Mr. Fox appears. That's pretty suspicious since we know foxes are known for raiding farms at night. Mr. Fox hanging around the hen house after dark could mean something. Plus, in an episode at the police station, we see a poster outside the station. There's a sign with fox symbols on either side, which might mean the cops are looking for Mr. Fox because everything in his shop has a label that looks a lot like the one on the sign. It's all pretty funny, but it could actually be a clue that he's a pro thief. And the funniest part is watching Freddy, who has a natural talent for being a cop, while Biba and Sushi chat about the future and we see how everything looks. The girl is daydreaming about how the years go by while Freddy, who's now a cop, walks past her. Maybe Freddy will catch Mr. Fox in the future, who knows? But one thing's for sure, something weird is going on with Mr. Fox. In another scene, the whole family is watching Mr. Potato on TV. Mr. Potato is hosting a workout show, and it's clear that in Peppa Pig's world, potatoes are all about fitness. But here's where it gets odd. Mr. Potato is cheering them on. Let the viewers eat a healthy diet full of fruits and veggies. Mr. Potato knows he's a plant, right? Is he just a talking animal in disguise? Or does he realize he's the only giant plant around here? That's a bit strange. Now, let's talk about one of the most annoying questions about Peppa Pig. In the episode The Fire Truck, we see Daddy Pig and his soccer team getting together for a barbecue. When we see the characters at the barbecue, we can see there's a giraffe, a rabbit, and a pony who are all vegetarians. But aside from them, we also have Mr. Bull and Mr. Pig at this barbecue. These two are the biggest meat groups used in barbecues around the world, beef and pork. So what kind of barbecue could a group of animals like this put together? Honestly, just thinking about it is a bit concerning. Anyone who's watched the show probably noticed the ground shakes when Daddy Pig jumps, and it seems like no one pays attention to those little details. Earthquakes are fine. We all know the characters are a bunch of pigs. But maybe Daddy Pig should follow Mr. Potato's diet and lose a bit of weight, because if he keeps this up, he's going to wreck the whole city. And in the end, we know Pepper is George's big sister, and George looks way smaller than Pepper, but they're in the same class at school. Isn't that a bit weird? Maybe George has some special talent and is ahead for his age, which is why he's in the same class as Pepper. Peppa does all the things she does in class, so she could be a really talented little pig. Another theory is that she might have some kind of learning difficulty, which is why she's in a lower grade. The show doesn't make it clear, leaving room for interpretation. Plus, it's kind of weird that all the animal families in Peppa's world live in houses on top of huge hills. The creators of the show said they designed the houses that way because they wanted. The illustrations looked like they were done by a kid, and the idea was to show the program from a child's point of view. They thought it would be fun to put the houses on really steep hills, but not everyone lives on a hill. For example, the rabbit family lives in a burrow inside a hill. When the bunnies get to Peppa's house, Richard the rabbit cries because he's scared of the stairs. Rebecca the rabbit explains that there are no stairs in their house. The next day, when Peppa and George go to the rabbit's house when they play, they're shocked to find out that the family lives underground and has to slide through a dirt tunnel to get to their room. Plus, it seems like the only thing they can eat are the carrots they say they love. Why is the rabbit family so broke? In this town, people have biases against rabbits because, even though the family seems really poor, Mrs. Rabbit has a ton of jobs. She used to be a helicopter pilot, worked in a tool shop, was a secretary, and even drove a bus, recycling center operator, and even ticket booth assistant. How does she manage to do all those jobs? Some think she cloned herself, while others see a message about the difference between being single or married. Or maybe she's a workaholic trying to cope with the deep sadness of living underground. While everyone else enjoys a house on the hill, we just dream. But it's clear the system is stacked against her. Rabbits are one of the weirdest things about the show. Some animals are just regular, like the ducks in the park, while others, like Pepper, her friends, and her family, talk and have human traits. Why do some animals act like people and others act like regular animals? It's a bit confusing, like those talking potatoes. Another question that Peppa Pig doesn't answer is, how do animals that are supposed to be predators in nature eat? For example, in the episode where George gets mad and the family calls the doctor, remember, bears are one of the biggest predators in nature, and having a house full of adorable piglets would be an irresistible opportunity for one. But of course, it's just a doctor who went to the pig's house to confirm what they already knew, that Jorge had a cold. Besides the doctor, we see that Dad designed a house for a family of wolves. In this episode, there's even a quick mention of the story of the three little pigs. Where the wolf wanted to eat them, let's not forget about the lion and the crocodile that work at the zoo in Peba. The funny thing is, the only one who seems scared of these wild animals is Mrs. Gazelle. So, the question is, what do these animals eat every day? Just veggies? Well, if they eat fruits and veggies, would they go after Mr. Potato or the berries and turn back into carnivores?